Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Loulou Bontemps, the costume designer for Guy Ritchie's Netflix comedy, The Gentleman. Loulou, there's so much we can dive into with this series, but don't we have to start with Freddy's chicken suit? I mean, this is what everyone's talking about. So now that I have the costume designer here with me, I just want to ask, you know, what were your thoughts in developing that? Did you want it to be hilarious, absurd? Did you want it to look realistic? What was in your mind with that costume specifically?
Wow. So that was a whole journey, that costume from start to finish. Um, Originally, it was always scripted a chicken suit, right? So whenever I get a new script, I'll go through it again and again and again, and I'll pick things out that really jump out at me. So there is a line where Tommy Dixon says to Susie Glass, I want Freddie to admit that he is a cock. And then he continues to say, I want him to do this video and I want him to put on a chicken suit. I took that one line and I thought, I want to do something a little bit far out, a little bit different, something that people aren't going to be expecting. So I started researching cockerels. I found this amazing painting of a beautiful, super colorful cockerel. And I took that to Guy and I said, listen, I really want to be kind of outrageous Elton John inspired costume here for this scene for the humor, because we all know that when we get to shoot that scene, it's going to be intense, it's going to be dramatic, but it's also got to be funny. And Guy absolutely loved it. He thought it was brilliant. So I was like, okay, we're going to create this costume completely bespoke. It's going to be completely unique to the show. And then we made it just in time for Daniel's first fitting. And as soon as he walked in, he just loved it. As soon as he put it on, he was just like, okay, he was in the world. So it was, I mean, there were some producers who were a bit nervous about it because it was quite outrageous. And I was like, there's just always iconic moments. And any opportunity you can get to take that iconic moment and create something wild and unique, I've got to take it. So I kind of had to push a few people outside of their comfort zone in order to kind of win that look, but we got there and it's been a huge success, and Daniel owned it and took it in his own dramatic way for that scene, and it made for an incredibly funny but utterly devastating scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Daniel really did own that. In your mind, when you were coming up with it, were you thinking like, where did they get this? Like, where in their world would they have found this chicken suit?
I think for me, it's like my references were like sport mascots, So I kind of, and then again, referencing Elton John, whenever he was in any kind of like Vegas dramatic costume. So I wanted it to be colorful, super vibrant, super eye-catching, really detailed, and absolutely hilarious. So to me, I just thought, it could have been a mascot for their local football team or something like that. I didn't want it to be just an average chicken costume that you can buy off somewhere online. I wanted it to be really quite spectacular.
Not like a Halloween costume. Um, It's a little more serious. If we talk about Susie Glass, who is just like a fashion queen in every sense of the word. When I spoke to Kaya Scodelario, she described her as a boss bitch, and her name alone, Susie Glass, oozes just coolness. So her look is always on point and always fits the occasion. So what is Susie's aesthetic, and what is the inspiration behind her fashion choices?
So when I first spoke to Guy about the character, and this was like before casting had even started, um, he really cares about his female leads and he's very interested in female fashion. So his brief was really that he wanted her to be an aspiring cockney. He wanted her to be powerful, assertive in the way that she dressed. So to me, I just wanted to celebrate London fashion, and by doing that, we brought in lots of luxury brands, some independent British brands, a lot of vintage clothes. And it was important to me that every look you can't just go to a shop and buy the whole look. I wanted it to be really unique to her. And then when Kaya came to the fitting and she was cast, I mean, we just had a wild time. It was just all styling, putting all these different looks together, always making sure there was an element of vintage and outrageously expensive designer luxury brands in there too, and then just putting it together and styling it and making her feel as confident, assertive, and powerful as possible. And I mean, Kaya owned it. Absolutely. It's always about the woman in the clothes, not necessarily the clothes themselves.
Well, and Susie Glass is very sexy, but she's not revealing. Like she's not trying to seduce anyone. So she's got this strong sex appeal, but doesn't necessarily use it. Talk about, making clothes that allow someone to look and feel that way, but it's not as if she's trying to lure Eddie in any way. I mean, she's in control. She's the mob boss here.
It's interesting because I mean, you'll often read a script and it will need to be in a scene where it's a little bit sexy, and they might describe that character wearing some sort of sexy silky gown or something like that. Um, and exactly what you say, a woman doesn't need to be wearing anything particularly fitted or tight or revealing in any way to have that, to ooze any kind of sex appeal. And that's another conversation that I consistently have with Guy about the power of how people dress and the style in which they wear it. So with Susie, it's her look is almost like a uniform for her. She puts it on and she feels powerful, and she's, there with the big boys, the big gangsters, and her dad is a notorious gangster in prison right now. So she really has to set that tone. And I think by the way in which Kaya wears the clothes and the way we styled it, and the height and the power and the fabrics and the tweeds and the leathers, all of it combined just made her look like a warrior in a way, but like a London gangster warrior.
When I spoke to Kaya, she described you as a genius. And uh, now that you can't say anything even remotely bad about her, I would love to know what she was like to work with for you, and how that collaboration worked when you were picking out, what was the right clothing for her to wear for a particular scene.
I mean, we had so much fun, Kaya and I. We had so many fittings. She has so many looks throughout the whole season. But the first fitting, we went really fashion, and we talked a lot about the character, and it was really bold and brave. And then we spoke to Guy, and he was like, it's too much. It's too much. It needs to be more London. It needs to be more uniquely London. So we refitted her and we did it in a more sort of stylized gangster, slightly vintage way. And I mean, Kaya owned every look. I think that the trick about styling is all of us, men and women, are all completely different shapes and sizes. So the trick when you're dressing somebody, especially if you wanted to make them feel powerful, is by where you have the lines, by where you have a waist sitting or a button sitting, or the height of somebody's heels can completely transform not just how that person looks, but how they feel as well. So Kaya, every time she put on a new pair of killer heels, I mean, I don't know how she walked in those heels, but she instantly felt like, okay, now I'm a boss bitch. And I mean, she owned every single look. And it's important to me that every time, especially with your leading lady, we talked about, okay, what do you feel? I feel you would be wearing this in this scene. And every time she went to the countryside, she'd be play a little bit country dress up. But whenever she was in her gym or whenever she was out at any kind of like boxing fights, she had a London gangster vibe on. So the textures and the colors changed dependent on what scene and scenario that she was in. Um, but it was wonderful working with Kaya because every scene was very different, and there were times when she needed to be vulnerable, there were times when she needed to be fun, there were times when she kind of needed to blend in. So I mean, we had like a bottomless pit of amazing looks to choose from. But we had a lot of fun sort of putting together that puzzle of what she would wear when.
Did you have a favorite look of hers?
I think my favorite is probably the red velvet, because it looked so beautiful in the set with the wallpaper, the whole scenario, and the whole crew together as a team for that scene as well. Just looked really beautiful. And she was so powerful. And I think to me, that was her strongest look in that moment. But I mean, I love every single one of them. I think there's also a lovely pink shirt with a beautiful feral knitted vest. I mean, all of it was just utterly divine. I think the more unique the look is, the more I love it.
What was Guy like as a director in terms of his involvement, and did he compare in any way to other filmmakers or TV production crews or directors that you've worked with?
So Guy, I mean, Guy creates a world completely unique to him, right? So the gentleman is his world. He created that in the movie. And we wanted to pay homage to the film, but very much create something new. With Guy, you can talk for hours and hours and hours about everything and nothing, and you lose yourself there and you end up talking about, okay, how can we, how can we improve this in the world? Or, we could talk for hours. But he cares a lot about, it's not necessarily fashion, but style. And there is a huge difference between fashion and style. Style is, fashion you can buy and you can learn, but style is really about the details and how people wear clothes, whether it's a fashion or function. And he really does care very much about women's fashion too. He wants women, especially his female characters, to look and feel powerful. So, I mean, we have countless conversations, especially about Susie and her looks, and all of them against each other. And I learn something new from Guy almost every day.
And Jolie Richardson plays Eddie and Freddie's mother. She's very fashionable as well in her own unique way. Talk about a woman like Sabrina, who has been sort of, I mean, well kept through her life. She's a mother, but she's also fashionable and she's in sort of this high society role.
Absolutely. So when I first met Jodie for her fitting, we were both on the same page. She didn't want to do the stereotypical British countryside lady of the estate. It's been done a lot before, and she wanted to create something a little bit unique to her. And it was her idea, really. She was like, maybe I'm like European. I have like a little European panache to my how I wear my clothes. But again, we celebrated a lot of British country brands, as well as mixing in with a lot of my own vintage clothes and things that I bought from Portobello Market. And again, with her, it's about what she puts together with what and how she wears it. She's always incredibly elegant, but fashiony too. It's just a little bit unusual. And the wonderful thing about her wardrobe is so many people and brands that I use have reached out and just say, oh my God, it's absolutely wonderful how you've styled Jolie. And it's really brought a whole new vibe to our look. And that's really good fun. It's really good fun. But it's always a collaboration between me, Guy, and the actor themselves. It's that's the wonderful thing about what I do, is like I'll have a vision and I'll have ideas and it'll be inspired by your director. But then when you have your fitting with your actor, I'd love to get them involved as much as possible and hear what their ideas are. And then slowly you can just see the character evolving, and you'll get that look. It might not be the first look that you put on, but you'll get there and she'll look in the mirror or he'll look in the mirror and be like, okay, this is it. This is my character. This is wonderful. So with Jolie, we just had a wild time, and I absolutely adore her. One of my favorite wardrobes on the shows, definitely hers. Yeah.
Do you notice that when you're working with different actors that some are just like, yeah, put me in anything, I'm ready to go. And then some really want to get detailed and like, no, the hat has to be this way. Like, is there a difference between actors on each set that you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on each set and each job, each character, I think there are some people who are really into their costumes and some people who aren't at first. But then when they arrive and they see how into my job I am, and they'll see all the work that's been put into it, and the world that I'm trying to create with them, and they'll get into it too, and then they'll come up with ideas. So everybody is completely different. I think, when Giancarlo Esposito, for example, who I fitted, he has an immaculate eye for style, and he just went wild in the fitting. He ended up keeping his whole wardrobe because he loved it all so much. It was beautiful bespoke suits. And then some actors will come in and they'll have a reference either to a family member, or they would have done their own research and they might have found like a hat like that they particularly liked, or they think, or maybe my character would have a stick or a ring that I can play with. There's always those little details, but they'll always get involved somewhere or another, even if they don't seem interested at all in the beginning. We have so much fun. There's always depth to every character, whether on camera they just look like super simple. A lot of work and research and time and attention will get put into just creating that. So yeah, even if an actor comes and isn't particularly bothered, I'll get them in the mood and we'll have a great time.
And talk about the menswear as well a little bit. I don't think menswear really ever gets enough credit. And like when awards are going out for costumes, it seems like it's always like the biggest gowns win. So when you're dressing like Theo James, those are it's important for all those men to look the way they look, whether it's Theo James or whether it's sort of like these gangsters that are coming after them. So talk about the menswear and what that looked like in this world of Guy Ritchie.
I think the menswear particularly stands out in the series because we have so many different male characters who have
Yeah.
completely different style statements, right? And we've got the northern gangsters, we've got the American gangsters, we've got different types of London gangsters, we've got the travelers, and then we have Eddie played by Theo James. And Guy really wanted his whole character to go through this wonderful arc from beginning to end of the series, and his wardrobe really played a part in that. And it's been very interesting, getting messages through social media, calls, emails, people who really noticed it and who've loved that evolution, and so much so that they've started themselves dressing as, the humble soldier where we first see Eddie, who's wearing clothes for function rather than fashion. And then slowly it starts evolving how he dresses because he's hanging out with these different people, and he's kind of discovering the gangster in him, and he's spending a lot of time with Susie. He's so impeccably dressed, it's rubbing off on him. So by the end of it, you're seeing him in these beautiful three-piece bespoke suits where he's discovered, okay, I am this gentleman gangster and I'm comfortable with this, and this is what I'm going to do. So I think by having that arc through his kind of style evolution in the show, people notice it more and they're like, oh, well, he was wearing that and now he's wearing this, and oh my god, he's getting, how about, why don't I start wearing a three-piece suit? So it's been really interesting seeing the response to that, and having that lovely juxtapose of all these completely different looks. Peter there in his Sergio Tacchini tracksuits, I mean, I love it, absolutely love it. And then you've got Giancarlo Esposito playing Stanley Johnson in this wonderful kind of like East Coast billionaire, super luxury fashion, doing his absolute best to try and break into British aristocracy. So just those three characters alone, it's completely different worlds of fashion, but so wonderfully true to where they came from and their history and who they are as characters. So again, like having those juxtapose of different types of style and fashion has kind of heightened the attention I think the menswear has received on the show, and that's wonderful. I love menswear, absolutely brilliant fun.
Yeah, it's great. And what pulled you into this world of costume design? Did you have an interest in fashion, or some people I've talked to grew up in theater and they were always making costumes, like they were theater kids, and then some people were into very high fashion. What pulled you into this world of costumes, and then what ultimately led to you working on film and TV?
I had this wonderful nostalgic moment when I was designing a job once, and I was drawing a sketch, and it just took me back to a time when I was tiny and I had these sketchbooks. My dad gave me and my younger sister these sketchbooks and said, every day you have to fill one page. And my books were just full of drawings of outfits, men's outfits, women's outfits, outrageous ones. So I've always, from a very young age, played dress up, drawn pictures, like really been interested in design and I guess fashion. And I grew up with a mom who made my clothes for me. She had a fabric shop. She took me around antique fairs. So I think since then, it's always been a part of my life. And I did study fashion, but then I left fashion school to go on this journey of styling. And I did music videos and I started doing costume design. So the whole journey, I was always meant to be here. I think it's a wonderful feeling when you finally in a place and you're like, oh no, this is where I belong. I'm so lucky to go to work and do what I absolutely love. And I keep learning more and more. And it's a bottomless pit of fashion history and learning style and new characters and things like that. So yeah, I absolutely love what I do. I was always meant to do it. It just took me a while to get here. But now I'm here, I'm loving it. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, it shows. I mean, you can tell when someone loves their work. It's really beautiful work on The Gentleman. Loulou, congratulations on the show, and best of luck to you and the whole cast and crew with the upcoming Emmy nominations. Thanks for joining Gold Derby today.
Thank you so much, Denton. Thank you.